Algebra 1 on Thursday, the 27th of February 2020. Hey guys, fun fact, 4 months from today is when I get to marry Hannah. My Hannah. Not the same.
Wait, 4 months?
4 months from today.
I thought you said it was on like the 12th.
This
No,
Hannah's
June
never
27th.
getting married.
Yeah,
I'm
4
going
months
to your
from today.
wedding.
Probably not. SMBA, students will be able to factor by graphing.
It looks like they said factor LOL
Factor
graph.
by graphing. Kinda.
Hey, where's your reception again?
It's
I don't know, is it? His middle name is Eugene.
Okay guys, voice off please. Voice off. Okay. So we factored out the GCF yesterday. It's gonna be 2 days ago last class. Yes.
Where your
thanks for
notes?
reminding me. Okay. So hey, stop. Thank you. Okay. So we factored out the GCF last time, and we did that in our homework that we just turned in a minute ago. Okay. And so today we're going to learn to factor by grouping. Okay. So we're going to start off by factoring out a GCF, but here, what's going to happen? We're going to look at it slightly differently. Okay. We're going to look at it slightly differently. Now, factors are two things that are multiplying together. Okay. Factors are two things that are multiplying together. Okay. Or things that divide evenly into another number, which means they can multiply together to get to a number. So in this case, 3a and x plus 5 are factors because 3a and x plus 5 are multiplying together. X is not a factor, 5 is not a factor, but x plus 5 altogether is a factor because it's multiplying with 3a. That part that x plus 5 is a factor and 3a is a factor makes sense. They are multiplying together, so by definition they are a factor. Just like 3 times 2, 3 and 2 are factors then. 3a times x plus 5, 3a is a factor, and x plus 5 is a factor. They're two factors. Okay? Now over here, minus, we start a new term, 2 times x plus 5. So 2 is a factor, and x plus 5 is again a factor. So 2 is a factor, and then x plus 5 is a factor. X is not a factor, 5 is not a factor, but x plus 5 altogether is a factor. Because x plus 5 altogether is multiplying with 2.
I don't get that.
Okay? So if I were saying 2 times 3, 2 and 3 are factors. That means they're multiplying together to get to a product, or answer for multiplication. Okay? So in this case, instead of 2 times 3, we're saying, instead of 3, it's x plus 5. So x is not multiplying, 5 is not multiplying, but x plus 5 is multiplying with 2.
Whack.
Does that make any more sense? Okay. Same thing over here. X not a factor, 5 is not a factor, but x plus 5 is all a factor because it's all multiplying with 3a. And so 3a is a factor and 2 is a factor. So here we have a common factor in both of these. What factor does this whole first part share and this whole second part share? Okay, so what the factors here are 3a and x plus 5. The factors here are 2 and x plus 5. So what factor do they have in common? What factor do they both have? This one has a factor of x plus 5. Does this one also have a factor of x plus 5? Yes. So is that a common factor?
Yeah.
Yeah. So between the first part of the problem and the second part of this expression, it doesn't have equal in this expression, those are a common factor. Just like in our warm-up, okay, or just like maybe in our homework problem from yesterday, we had 5a cubed minus 7a, and the common factor was a. They both had an a in common. So same idea, we took this a and put it out in front. And we said, okay, well 5a cubed divided by a is 5a squared. 7a divided by a is minus 7. We call that our answer. Same idea here. Except for now, our GCF is going to be x plus 5. That's all a common factor. So what we're going to do is we're going to put x plus 5 in parentheses out in front of our other parentheses. So just like we put this a out in front, we're going to put this x plus 5 out in front. Because we're going to say our GCF here is x plus 5. It's x plus 5. Let me rewrite that 5.
I wasn't rewriting.
You're right.
Erasing something.
It did end up just being erasing.
God,
So then to figure out what goes in the other parenthesis, same concept. So just like here, we took 5a cubed, I almost say 5a squared, 5a cubed, let's say most write down after let's forget, and we divided by our GCF A to get what's here. We're going to take this part, 3a times x plus 5, 3a times x plus 5, and we're going to divide by x plus 5. Now what can happen is since these are multiplying here and we have an x plus 5 and an x plus 5, is we can simplify those out. And so what are we left with?
3A.
3a. We took the x plus 5 out, we're left with the other factor, 3a. Just like here, we took the a out, we're left with 5a squared. Same thing over here, we can divide this term by x plus 5, our GCF again. And yep, these reduce, and we have negative 2 left. We have negative 2 left. Just like we had took negative 7a divided by a, we had negative 7 left. We took away the a, it's not there anymore. We took away the x plus 5, it's not there anymore, we're left with negative 2. And that worked because there was multiplication. Because 2 was multiplying with x plus 5, 3a was multiplying with x plus 5. And so this, x plus 5 times the quantity of 3 minus 2, would be our answer. We factored out the GCF. So this is just like what we did last time, but now it just looks a little different. But we're still doing the same math, actually, of factoring out the greatest common factor between these two terms.
Yeah.
Now, what I want to point out to you guys, okay, and I'm just going to do this down here to give myself room, but if we were to take this and we were to distribute back in x plus 5 multiplied to 3, we get 3a times x plus 5, and then x plus 5 times negative 2 times x plus 5. Another way we can think about it, I just want to show you guys, so this does not have to do with this part down here, I don't want you to write this down, I just want to show you guys somewhere. So if I started off with the same problem, 3a times x plus 5 minus 2 times x plus 5, that's the same problem we started with, right? Okay. If I had gone through and I distributed and combine like terms, I'd have 3ax plus 15a. My pen went crazy there again. That's true. My changes plus to a negative. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x, and negative 2 times 5 is negative 10. So I end up with 3ax plus 15a minus 2x minus 10. And then if I had gone through and I had taken this x plus 5 that we ended up with as our answer, times 3a minus 2, and I FOIL this, I do first outside, inside last, x times 3a is 3ax, x times 2 is negative 2x, 5 times 3a is 15a, and 5 times negative 2 is negative 10. If I reorder this in standard order, it goes 3ax plus 15a, because a comes before x, minus 2x, minus 10. Is this the same thing?
Yeah.
I get the same thing as I got in the red. So that means if I had taken from what we had originally given, and we had distributed, we'd get this. If I had taken what we ended up with after we factored, so we call it after we factored, and I refoiled again, we get the same thing. Is that how we checked our work on the previous homework? Yeah, we checked our work by multiplying back through and see if we got the same thing. And we do get the same thing, meaning that's correct. Okay, so in the dark blue up there, that is correct. That's why. Up here on number 2, I want to say, okay, well again in the first part, if I'm trying to factor out a GCF, I'm trying to figure out what is our GCF. What is our GCF? Okay, and Levi's saying a minus 3. If we look at these, 2x is multiplying with a minus 3. So 2x is a factor, a minus 3 is a factor. Plus, over here, y is multiplying with a minus 3. Y is a factor, a minus 3 is a factor. So yeah, they do have this a minus 3 in common. So that is our GCF. Okay, go ahead and write that with me now if you haven't. Okay, go ahead and write that with me now if you haven't. Okay. And then just like before, where are we going to put this GCF at? Underneath, right? We're gonna put this a minus 3, and then afterwards we're gonna put a new set of parentheses, right? We're gonna put a new set of parentheses. What happens after we take out or factor out or divide out our GCF? So just like before, we had started off with actually dividing by a and dividing by a, but then we started not writing it after a while, didn't we? We started off by every time writing what we're dividing by, and we had stopped doing it after a while. So I'm going to start off with this again though. We're going to divide this by a minus 3. Now because we're multiplying up here 2x and a minus 3, we can divide out these factors. And we're left with 2x. Can anybody tell me how to end my parenthesis? Plus y. Because if I divide the second part by a minus 3 as well, those simplify, and I'm left with y. So I divide both terms by my GCF because I'm taking my GCF out. And the same thing here, guys, if I were to go through and I started with my original problem and I went through and combined like terms, or went through and distributed and combined like terms, and I went through here and I FOILed and combined like terms, we get the same answer. We get the same thing, meaning we did it correctly. So this is our answer. Questions on that? Okay, is that a little bit different? Just a tad, right? It looks different, right? It looks quite a bit different, but in reality, what we're doing there isn't incredibly different, and it looks a lot more different than it actually is. It's still different, but it looks a lot more different than it actually is. Any questions on that? So I want to make sure you guys understand these two before we go on and continue, because we're going to go a little bit deeper with it. Okay. When there are 4 terms, 1, 2, 3, 4 terms, we put them in groups of 2, and then look for a GCF. And then we look for a GCF of those terms. So for example, when there are 4 terms, 1, 2, 3, 4 terms, and they're different terms. So there are 4 terms, 4ab plus 3a plus 8b plus 6. We put them in groups of 2. So we put the first 2, 4ab plus 3a, we put them in parentheses, we grouped them. 8b plus 6, we put them in a set of parentheses and we grouped them. That's what it says, we put them in groups of 2. That's that first step. Okay, we literally just took the same thing and we put parentheses around it. Does everyone understand that first step? We literally just put parentheses. Okay? And then look for a GCF in each of these parentheses. So if I cover this up, 4ab plus 3a, can we find the GCF of that? What would you guys call that? What would the GCF of this be though? A. So we factor out an A, and we're left with 4b plus 3. Is that what we see? Yeah. Okay. And then we do the same thing for the next parenthesis. 8b plus 6. What's our GCF of 8b plus 6? 2. 2. So we factor out the 2, and we're left with 4b plus 3. So we factored this one like we would have yesterday, and we factored this one on the right like we would have yesterday. So we just factored both sets of parentheses like we would have yesterday. And for a moment, we ignore that the other one exists. Then we say, hey, wait, we're at the same point we were at with 1 and 2. Are we at the same point we were at with 1 and 2 in this step right here? Where my pen is at? Yeah, because we have 2 things multiplying together over here, plus or minus 2 things multiplying together over here. And if we look here, do they have a common factor of 4b plus 3? Yeah, they both have that 4b plus 3 multiplying together. So now we do the same thing as where we finished off, where we take this 4b plus 3 and we put our new GCF out in front. And then decide what goes inside the parenthesis. We take this first part and divide by 4b plus 3 and get a. Second part, the same thing, and we get 2. And we go from having this at the start to having this at the end. And if I were to go back through to check my work, this would be our answer. If I were to go back through and check my work by FOILing, we get what we started with. 4b plus 3 times the quantity of a plus 2, and I FOIL. 4b times a is 4ab. 4b times 2 is 8b. 3 times a is 3a. And 3 times 2 is 6. Now we might notice we don't have it in standard form. We need the 3a to be before the ab. 4ab, man, this is really not like me today. Plus 3a, plus 8b, and plus 6. We end up with the same thing we started with.
Yeah.
So if I go the reverse direction, this is what we started with, this foiling before last chapter. We started this. And we get this. Now we're going the reverse direction. We're starting with what we ended with before. So before we ended with this, now we're starting with this. And we're going back to where we started. So just like we did last class, we started at the end, we're going backwards now. Same idea. We're just doing with a different type of problem. And we're still using GCFs. We're still using GCFs like we did. We're just using it 3 different times now. Okay, we're using it 3 different times now. Okay. Let's try turning the page and we'll try a few examples. Okay, we don't have a ton of examples today. Okay, so it shouldn't take too terribly long, so hopefully we'll get some good work time, right? So that way you guys can practice on your own because that's so valuable. Okay. What was that? Yeah, and you have me to ask questions here, other when you're at home, you're just, okay. So, on number 1, how many terms do we have? 4. Now, we just read on the previous page, when you have 4 terms, what do we want to do? Put them in
Groups of 2.
groups of 2. So how do we put these in groups of 2? Parentheses around them. So I'm going to put parentheses around the first 2 and the second 2. Now, be careful here. When I put my parentheses around the second 2, I want to include the sign with that third term. I want to include that sign with the third term, okay? I always like to include that sign there. Okay. And notice I just wrote the parentheses around the original problem. I didn't write a new problem. I just wrote them around the original problem, okay? And then if we need to, let's flip back and say, okay, what did we do after we put them in groups of 2? And then what? What does it say? Go and flip your page over and read it. It says, when there are 4 terms, we put them in groups of 2, and then look for a GCF. And that means look for a GCF in each of the parentheses. So in 15a minus 3ab, in this first parenthesis, it may ignore the fact that this second one exists right now. What is our GCF in our first parenthesis?
3A.
3a. 15a and negative 3ab both have a 3a in common. So we take this parenthesis and we put the 3a out in front. What is now going to be in this parenthesis?
5.
5 minus b. 15a divided by 3a is 5. Negative 3ab divided by 3a is negative b. Okay. Questions on this so far? Okay. Now we're going to do the same thing with the second parenthesis. We say, okay, forgetting the first one exists for a second, negative 4b plus 20. What is our GCF there?
4.
Negative 4. And Levi did a really good job of saying negative because we want the first part to be positive. Okay? Okay? So let's try a negative 4. Okay? Let's assume let's raise down an after, let's forget.
Minus.
Okay? So we're going to put a negative 4 out. Let's raise down an after, let's forget. So we have b, and Levi said minus 5. Now, here's the thing. Because after we do this, we want to make sure that the parentheses are the same because we need a new common factor. Because the next thing we want to do, it says then we look for a GCF of these 2 terms. Okay, so this whole first term and this whole second term, like we did on numbers 1 and 2, we want to look for a GCF. But is 5 minus b and b minus 5 the same thing? No, they're not. So we need to change one of them. So actually we're going to back up a second and say instead of making this a negative 4, we're going to make that a positive 4. So if I instead factored a positive 4 out, what would this end up becoming instead? Negative b and plus 5. Now, is 5 minus b and negative b plus 5 the same thing? Yeah, because we still carry the negative with the b, okay? So 5 minus b and negative b plus 5 is the same thing. So now, do these two have a greatest common factor? Does the first part and second part have a greatest common factor? Yeah, just like in the first two we did. And it's that 5 minus b or negative b minus 5. Okay, now we typically put the b's first, right, the variables first. Okay, so we can put this new GCF, negative b plus 5, out in front. And then we say, okay, well, what's going to go in our second set of parentheses now?
3a plus 4.
Okay, and so to figure that out, Levi has it right. But to figure it out, what we do is we take the first part, this 3a times the quantity of 5 minus b, and we divide by the GCF. So what happens when we take away the negative b plus 5? We're left with 3a. And so when we take away or factor out the negative b plus 5 in the second part, we're left with plus 4. So we have negative b plus 5 times the quantity of 3a plus 4. And that is our answer. Okay? And how could we check our answer? Foil. If we foil, we'll check our answer. And I'll do that for you guys. You guys don't have to do that right now, but I'll just show you. Negative b times 3a, negative 3ab. Negative b times 4, negative 4b. 5 times 3a, 15a. And 5 times 4, 20. And I put this in standard form. Negative 3ab would come first. Actually, so yeah, this should come first. 15a comes second. 4b comes third. And 20 comes fourth. But I have negative 3ab plus 15a minus 4b plus 20. And now this is the same thing as what we started with, except for it's in a different order, right? That first one wasn't in standard form. Okay. And actually, yeah, questions on that first one. Okay. Now, rolling with the fact that that first one didn't start in standard form, did it? We like these to start in standard form, so I'm going to rewrite number 2 so it's in standard form. What should actually go first? Negative 2CD. What should actually come second now? Negative C.
Plus C.
Or plus C, thank you, plus C. Positive C. Minus 8D plus 4, right? That's the order it actually should be in. So let's go ahead and put it in this order instead. Let's just put it in standard form. That's going to make our life easier, I think. Okay. So now, how many terms are there, did we say? 4. So, Doc, what did it say? What's the first thing it wants us to do when there are 4 terms? Yeah, groups of 2, right? Yeah. So put parentheses around the first 2 and the second 2. What did I say to be careful with this sign?
Keep the sign in there.
Keep the sign with that third number. It travels with that AD. Okay? So we have 2 different sets of parentheses now. What do we do after we have these sets of parentheses?
You find the greatest common factor.
Yeah, you find the greatest common factor of each of them. So ignore the second one for a second and say negative 2CD plus C. Negative 2CD plus C. Let's go. Let's see what's turns out after. Let's forget. What's our GCF?
C.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what kind of C actually? We're going to take this negative out still. Okay. We're going to take the negative out there. So negative C. And what are we left with in the first part? 2D. And what's C divided by negative C? Negative 1. C divided by C is 1, so C divided by negative C is negative 1. Then we also look for a GCF in the second parenthesis, so we ignore the fact that the first one exists for a moment, and it is a type of 4. Negative 4, because we want this to be positive. And now if we factor out a negative 4, what are we left with?
Positive 2D.
Yep. Minus 1. So after we factor that out, I'm going to pause here. Does everyone understand how we got to this point?
Yeah.
Okay, Professor's saying maybe, okay? So Presley, did the black part make sense? Okay. Did the grouping make sense, putting them in 2 different groups? Okay. did this GCF make sense? Okay, so does it make sense that it would be that they both have a C in common? Okay. And then we want our first part to try and be positive. So in order to make this one positive when it's negative, we have to take out a negative. So we take out a negative C. Now what would be negative 2CD divided by negative C? Or 2B. And positive C divided by negative C is negative 1. Does that first part make sense now or no? Okay, be honest with me if it doesn't. Okay. Does the second part make sense? Okay. So alright, does it make sense in how we got here now or no? Okay. If it doesn't, I want to know. Okay, but if it does, then we're good. Okay. Okay. So now we're at the same point we've been at with 1 and 2, and with our example in our previous example now. So it says in our notes, after we put them in groups of 2 and look for a GCF, then we look for a GCF of these two big terms. Do these big two terms have a GCF? What do they have? Hannah, what do you think it is? Exactly right, 2D minus 1. They both have a 2D minus 1 multiplying there. So we take that out as our GCF, 2D minus 1. Then we say, okay, now we need to figure out what's going to be in our second parentheses. So just like before with our GCF, we took out the GCF and then figured out what was left.
Minus C.
We're doing the same thing here, okay? Now, because we have the same 2D minus 1, this worked out. Because we have the same 2D minus 1 that worked out there, okay? Would we have been able to do this if this was a negative 2D plus 1? No, we'd had to change like we did the previous one. That's why we like pulling out the negative 4 and the negative C, okay? So what's going to be left in my first part if I pull out or factor out or take
Negative
away
C.
2D minus 1? Negative C.
And negative 4.
And negative 4. So these are our two factors. 2D minus 1 and the quantity of negative C minus 4. And if I FOIL these, what do you think I'm going to get, guys?
Negative 2CD plus C minus 8B plus 1.
I'm going to get the same thing up here. It might just start off in a different order. And that means we did it right.
Good job.
Okay. Questions on that? Okay. So one really handy thing I like about this, guys, is you can always check your work. You can always check your work. We like being able to check our work because then we know if we've got it right or wrong. Okay. So on a test, okay, you're able to go back through and say, oh, did I get this right? I don't know, let me multiply, let me FOIL it back through. Oh, I got the same thing? Oh yeah, okay, I did it right. Okay. On number 3, I want, somebody want to come up here and do the first couple steps on number 3. Does anyone want to volunteer to do a couple steps here on number 3, okay? Levi, I want you to go ahead and actually let's do the first step on number 3.
I'll do a second.
Okay.
Maybe.
Okay.
Actually, never mind.
And I just make one slight adjustment because what do I want to do with that third number? With the 4 and what do I want to do? I want to include the sign, right? Okay. Yeah. So I just want to make sure we put that in the parentheses. There you go. Extra parentheses. Okay, so very good, Levi. So Levi grouped the first two together and the last two together because we have 4 terms. Very good. Anyone want to volunteer to our next step, or at least part of our next step? Dalton? Okay. Look awesome.
That's awkward.
Those 4 and go into both 5 and Q.
You almost press that with your finger.
Yeah, try to. Okay. What goes into both 5 and cubed? Yeah, squared.
5, right?
Yeah.
Just 5.
5, something else. But yikes. Big oops.
Jeez, dog, you messed it up.
Whoa, this is so weird.
Me?
No, not
You're just like looking at me like this.
Yeah, that's not use that word.
Maddox, all you have to do is like shave the sides and the top.
You recorded it.
You should like that.
What do you say the GCF was? No, we're gonna erase it because this is written.
I am. Don't click on it.
You wanna erase the file? We'll write it. Yeah. I like to keep order.
Put it in a GCF with that. I'll make it in that.
Oh, it's really big. Okay.
Jeez. Hey, whoa. Only I can do that.
Okay, 5 and what? What else?
5 and to the 5th.
How many ends do they have?
What?
And squares, so 5 and squared.
Oh, even like a year, I look over and you're just sitting there like this.
Yeah, it's really aggressive.
No, I would just go like this. I look over and Press is just like looking at me like
Yeah.
that's awkward. And then 1.
What's 20 divided by 5? That's where you want your 4.
He's all my right from me.
Okay, I'm gonna do the second part so I can manage the side
Thank
again.
you, please.
5n squared
He's
is
all
what our
right.
great. Hey guys, touch up here. Thank you, Dalton, for doing that. So 5n squared are GCF of the first part. They both have a 5 in common, and they both have n squared in common. So we factor out the 5n squared both n, or n to the first, and 4. In our second parenthesis, 4n plus 16. Maddox, what is our GCF? Of 4n plus 16. 4. So we have the plus 4 that we pull out, a positive 4 we pull out, times the quantity of n plus 4.
Good job, Mr. Crawford.
Okay?
James,
That's
yeah.
so big, that's so
Because I wrote mine in normal size.
She's Dalton, right?
And Dalton wanted to be like Dalton.
I wrote mine in Dylan.
You can never be Dylan.
I just kidding. He wanted to be a dirty cow. Okay? Okay. So,
Okay.
And
What's a new name you call him except for
That's middle school.
Dylan.
I passed that.
alright, anyway. Now we look for a GCF in both of these. Presley, what do you think the GCF in both of these two terms, the big term and the little term, are going to be? N plus 4. So we're going to put that right here. That's our GCF we pull out in front.
dang it.
The GCF we take out in front, just like we did 2 days ago and during our homework that we turned in today. That's the GCF we pull out in front. Now, if we take n plus 4 out of this first term, what are we left
I
with?
got the answer.
Okay, Dylan, what are we left with?
5n squared plus
Yep.
4 equals that's it.
5n squared. And then in the second parentheses, we left with plus 4.
Why we say 5 and squared?
Because we divided 10 plus 4 and then you get
Victoria,
Jeez, ma'am.
so because the GCF of this first two terms was 5n squared.
Okay.
Because they both have n,
Okay.
just has n to the third n squared.
Oh, ow.
Does that actually make sense now?
Yes.
Did you harden yourself?
Off your jaw.
Ow.
Did you harden yourself?
Yes.
Why'd you do that?
Okay. Questions on that one?
I could have been easily avoided.
Okay. I want you guys to try number 4.
Oh, I got it. Can I write it on the board? Can I do it?
Probably not. No, I think you lost
Please
your
don't.
votes.
Can I do it on the board? I'll write in
Go double
actual
check.
good stuff.
How you guys do go into
What?
Okay, so try doing this and I do
It does good.
I already gonna get it.
Discuss. I don't know this.
Am I? Yes.
For Maddox.
Guys, help me.
Okay.
Maddox.
So what's negative 2y divided by
Come here.
Matthew,
same
help.
thing.
Bruh, here.
Oh, that's so
Am I supposed to
far.
reorder
You
this?
just want to stare.
Because the 2's still there, right?
Oh.
And what's negative 7 divided by odd or negative? Does 2 go in both these numbers? So the x, this is still a 2y, isn't it? Now does this look a little better?
Hey, hang on.
Am I supposed to reorder
Come here.
Oh, we don't.
There's the GCF on the first and the GCF on the second. There's not a no GCF on the second.
How do we pull out a different
Make
number?
one and negative one.
Why are you taking David to fire? David.
Hey, Danny and I did it together.
Oh, okay.
I need you seen her in this class at all this semester?
I don't think it would have had anybody.
I got all you.
What do you mean, what?
Oh, I just got a big old
Miss-
back pop.
What did you do? Come here. Okay. I did it first. It'll lead.
What the?
Oh, this is so
There's a number, 2 and 7 nothing.
Oh,
So
so
easy in the very beginning.
I got stuck.
That's why I can't. Well, okay, I got a question. Yes? No, I got it. No. What are you doing? No. You broke it.
You broke it, your pencil did?
No, I didn't broke it. Did you get it right?
That's good.
I know.
Now here, you have 2y minus 7. What can we pull out of that?
Guys, how come we never hang out in here?
Okay, do they both have y?
I got like that one.
A 1. So what kind of
Guys,
a-
never over your house.
That's
Yeah,
so
you-
easy. So I think we'll all want to get there.
What I remember when I showed up your house.
Take the negative
And
ones, split them.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
then we're going to the community center the next day. Your dad just straight up pulled up right behind us, smiley face.
Oh, yes, I knew exactly what to do. I was doing this smiley face, bro.
Maddox, your dad told my dad that I said that my dad doesn't throw my little back of it. What?
Victoria.
Yeah, what I said, that's one.
So you remember how I told your dad that
Oh,
my
yeah.
dad doesn't care if I
I saw your dad at GQ.
Yeah.
I don't know, for like 2 nights.
Yeah. Where?
GQ.
Yeah. Yes.
As soon as bathroom.
Yeah, I know.
I need to go. Oh my God.
Last night I was driving around in his truck.
And we know we want this to
Hard to
match,
get.
right? So I think, how can we get negative 2y minus 7 to match it? Well, it's different. Oh,
Yeah, boy.
negatives. No, you're taking negatives.
Mr. Cross, you're getting your photo taken.
You're getting your photo taken.
I
you
ruined
look
it.
fresh. Who's that? I can't see who's there.
Okay, so for class, I'm taking
Ronald.
pictures of the people that I think are the most like positive reinforcements in our school, and you're helping her, and then they ruined it. So
That sounds like.
Go sit back down there.
I didn't ruin it.
Go
I
sit
just
back
said
down
you're
there.
getting your picture taken.
to help her.
Make it look like a mugshot.
See, that way there, I helped you, because now you don't have
No, you
bars in the
didn't.
window.
Just cross like this.
So Presley, we got.
That's kind
I'll
of
give you a new number.
weird.
It's not
I'll
really
see
right.
you first.
No, it's not. I did that every other class,
No,
and
just
nobody
Logan's like,
ruined it.
I just
Oh, God.
happened to look in the window. I was like,
I just happened to look in the window after I seen Dalton.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, cool.
Thank
That's
you.
what I got.
See it?
Look
I
at it.
got, and then that's what you
So I
Thank
got.
you so
Hashtag
much.
Kansas.
Hashtag perfect picture.
Okay.
got. How
Bye.
you feeling?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Claus.
See, now you don't have bars in the window.
Yes. Are we done?
I'm good.
Dad's
I'm
hair
good.
was still wet.
She flicked
You
me
got-
off.
Dad's hair was still wet.
I said, you're welcome. She goes,
No, it's. I would too.
that's what she did.
It's just one, it's just curly hair.
No, she, you're lying.
I don't want you to show it.
You're lying. Sorry, she went like this.
Okay,
Like,
Kyler's hair
like
always
that.
looks wet.
voice off. Gotta get a volunteer to do this one on the board.
Me,
Levi,
me, Dylan, please,
All right,
please,
Levi's
Dylan,
back.
Okay,
please.
Dylan, you can do it.
Yeah.
Dilly dabble. Just
No.
right
Wait.
here, here.
Look at his ankles.
Do you have an ankle fetish?
No.
I think you
I
need
just
to
think it looks weird.
I think the boots look now.
I think they look nice because they get
It's weird because you have like skinny ankles and the rest of it is
How
not
you
me
use?
though.
I'm really stingy.
Max, you want a box?
Floating head and arm.
Max, why don't you ever want a box? So, I said we could have done that at my house. You said no.
You would literally destroy Dylan. Why do
Okay, bye.
you? There's always a first for everything.
Yeah, Max, let's go right now.
Press even what I don't care.
What? What? Yeah, let's go, Matt.
I see Matthew. I think that.
You don't know where I live. No, you don't.
Who doesn't know?
I have my Snap Map shirt on.
Who doesn't? You don't.
I don't share my location.
I've been
He
figuring
lives-
out where Matthew lives.
right across from middle school, pretty much. Max
Really?
knows where yeah,
I
Max
thought
knows where I
Alex would
live.
have lived in like a cornfield or something.
I was in
Maddox.
Maddox.
Or not Maddox, I meant Matthew.
I was just saying, yeah,
Yeah.
kinda.
I don't know why I said
So you
Maddox.
kinda
I was looking at Matthew and thinking.
I'd say you kind of do.
I live in a neighborhood. I live
You
across.
sit down in the chair.
I live across the street from Peyton Blankman.
Yeah.
Because everyone knows where
Didn't
Peyton Blankman lives.
We don't have like field trip to the
The only reason,
That's
the only
my
reason I know
house.
where, Nick Turner, the only reason I know where you live is because we had to drop your sister over your house.
Dylan, explain it.
I did that, and then I did that, and then I did that, and then I got.
No,
the-
actually, good job.
Alright, so I did the parentheses like we're supposed to, and then I got the sign in there.
Yep.
See, look at that
Yeah.
sign. Okay, and then I put it all in order, like this.
Okay, but what did you do with that first parenthesis?
Oh, I did found the common thing.
You factor out what?
I factored out the this thing. Yes.
Which is what?
This.
Which is
That is one.
one. Okay, X.
Yes,
Gotcha.
yes, yes. And then I did the division.
And when you
thingy.
factor out the second one.
Oh, and then I did the negative one thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and then I did this thing, and then I got the answer with that.
Okay, so the GCS out in front, and what was left is in the second parenthesis. Very good.
I need to write it.
Yes.
Dang.
job, Dylan.
Ah!
My
That was my hand. I did it quietly.
Thanks, Matthew. So you fix paper.
Hey, we don't have to do that.
Hey, you guys don't have to do the back.
Paper.
You guys also don't have to do number one.
Yeah, where's the fucking-
Don't do number one, why not?
It doesn't factor.
So then why do you put it on there?
It was sick.
Hey, do you think anyone doesn't like you, Mr. Fossil?
Yeah.
Like not students, I mean like humans.
Yeah.
People. Really?
Probably.
Did you write that? Did you make it die?
No, but as soon Peyton came.
No, I mean like
over,
adults.
Probably.
Really? What would they not
Mr.
like?
Carlson, have you ever gotten in a fist fight?
What?
Have you ever been in an argument with someone?
No, human.
Look, these questions. Oh, Lord.
I super have.
Wait, you've gotten in a fist fight with someone?
No, he said he hasn't.
An argument.
Did you get a
I've gotten in a fight with someone.
You ever stop anyone?
An
What did
eighth
you
grade.
do?
Did you
I
drop
remember
them?
in
No,
I
it
remember
wasn't
in
like
fourth
anything.
grade, or no, fifth grade, Zach went
It was
along
like
to
a
me,
different
he
I basically fouled a guy like as he had a
and I go there after school and he doesn't even go there.
Remember the big fight in fifth grade? Everyone was
Guess
just
what?
fighting each other.
So I saw like this. Someone showed me
I don't
this
care.
fight video. Like there's these Snapchats that like post fight videos, and one of them was from the middle school, like
Here?
our middle school. It was Ashley Gillespie, like some kid. Did you see that? No, I haven't.
I remember Connor, Barry wanted to fight me last year.